everyone. Welcome back to the Take 2 Minutes podcast. I'm your host and founder of Take 2 Minutes, Mark Fussell. Joining me this week is Heather Gabbert. Heather is a registered dietitian, nutritionist with over 20 years of experience, covering many areas of dietetics, including gut health, with a primary focus on wellness and helping people fight cancer, chronic diseases, and illnesses by educating people on the anti-inflammatory lifestyle approach to eating healthy. Heather also offers one-on-one coaching and consultations to help individuals achieve their health goals by taking control of their health. Heather, welcome to the show. It's great to have you on.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm happy to be here.
Very good. So tell us a little bit more about yourself on and above what I just said, and also how you got started in this area.
I would love to. So, it's actually been almost 30 years now. I've been a dietitian. I know. Time flies. I graduated in 1995 from the graduate program at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale. And it really started there. I had gone through a number of majors. And I was on the dance squad in college, and one of the other dancers came in and she was so excited. She threw down her stuff and she said, "I just aced my biochem exam." And I was like, "You did what?" And she said, "Oh, yes, Heather, you would love it." Her name was Heather too. And she was like, "You would love it. I just know." And so I took a nutrition class, and from then on I was hooked. And I started in clinical, and for the majority of my near 30 years, it's been in oncology and on the other side of the spectrum, wellness. And so it's been a really nice balance between helping people fight cancer. And that's really what birthed my virtual nutrition setting, because every patient was really like, why am I just now hearing about these things after I have cancer? So, it took them being sick to get the instruction. So, yeah. So
that's so often the unfortunate case that it takes someone having a life event to recognize the importance of eating healthy and doing the right things for your body.
Right. And that's what we were made reactionary, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, we are. So. Yeah. Why don't you explain to anyone who doesn't know what it means to be a registered dietitian? That's an important thing, I think, to denote.
Absolutely. Well, a registered dietitian is someone who has gone through the schooling and the practicum to become able or eligible to sit in the certification for registration exam. So it's much like, physicians need to be board certified, dietitians need to be certified. And so it's certification for dietetic registration. Okay. So it's about 6 years process. And then you take your exam and, you're good to go. They are requiring now master's programs. Back when I did it, they did not. I luckily do have my master's. So there are some 4-year programs as well. So we're experts in food and nutrition. And there can be a disconnect because we're trained clinically, right? And so we're trained for the hospital settings and clinical acute settings. And then the outpatient scene was kind of like hey, here's a piece of paper, make good choices. And that didn't ever settle right with me. And from about after my first few years in working in hospitals, I quickly turned to outpatient setting. And so you'll see registered dietitians and nutritionists in many different realms. So we're in the clinical setting, we're in outpatient or wellness, consumer-based, food service, which I happen to be both. And there's just, so many now with, of course, the social realms and everything that we have going on now.
I think you hit on it. A registered dietitian could be one of many things. And I think what's interesting to me by the little bit I know about you is you do focus more on how individuals can truly be healthy, because a registered dietitian, as you said, could be someone who's creating a menu for a hospital. And that need is very different from just trying to be healthy. Not saying hospital food is not healthy, but they have very very stringent needs for the individuals there. And they're not necessarily focusing on what is like a superfood or super nutritious or going to help your gut or going to help your mental well-being, whereas you focus more on those aspects, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. Because then when you're in the hospital, you're there because you're sick, right? You have a reason to be there. And so
Yes.
the food is literally to sustain you and to meet the needs of whatever your diagnosis is. And so it has to be within those parameters. And then, out in the outpatient world, we get to spread our wings a lot more because we're talking with consumers. And that's what I love about the virtual world, because just today, for example, I was able to show the beetroot powder, the tea, the different brand names and things that I have in my own kitchen that you should have in yours, So yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Beetroot powder. I have some upstairs. I try to take a little bit every morning. It's awesome.
Isn't it amazing? It just really helps with, like, everyone thinks you need caffeine.
Yes.
And if you have a beetroot powder drink, I mean, you're firing on all cylinders. Good job.
I have a funny hospital food story that I want to share with everyone, including you. So a lot of people don't know this about me, but in 2006, I had an internal bleed and I almost died. I was in the hospital, went to the ER. They put me in the ICU. I was in the ICU for 4 days, and the whole 4 days I wasn't allowed to eat. I couldn't drink water. If I really wanted something, they gave me those little, cotton swabs with water dipped in it just to make my mouth wet. And that's all I was given for like 4 days. And on the 5th day, everything was healing up finally. And they were going to give me some food. And I was really excited to get food. And they brought me in a cup of beef broth. And I tell you what, after not eating for 5 days, that was one of the best meals I've ever had in my life, was a cup of beef broth. I was like, I love this beef broth. It's so good.
So good. That's amazing.
Yes.
Well, glad you're okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. And you know what? That brings up such a good point. I was just thinking about how I hadn't eaten. And so when I actually just had like a mint, an Altoid mint kind of thing, and I thought, this is the best mint I've ever had. This is the best. And just like with your heightened awareness of that broth, baby, you were like,
that broth was so good. I have a bunch of questions I want to ask you, but since we're talking about not eating, I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on, I want to call it a fad. I don't think it's a fad at all, but the intermittent fasting or just all in all fasting. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think fasting is actually a very good practice to have and incorporate in anybody's world. Now, the amount of days can vary, right?
Yes.
Health speaking, health wise, I wouldn't in general say everyone go on a 24 to 36 hour fast. But to start with, intermittent fasting is a great approach to really gain that self-discipline that we need. And it really brings up other things that are going on. So that's why I think the intermittent fasting is so fantastic, for one. And of course, first and foremost, is because it helps with the inflammatory response, kind of break it down. The body goes into inflammatory mode, like, wait a minute, what's going on here? And then it shows how it quickly switches gears. And that way it calms down everything in the end. And it really does work to be anti-inflammatory and regulatory. So I think fasting, and playing around with it and your feeding times is a really, fun way really to see, okay, when do I really need to eat? Am I listening to my hunger and satiety cues? Am I, really paying attention to what I'm eating? Or am I just eating because I'm hungry, I'm bored, it's convenient? So it really brings around some other key points in your overall wellness that is like, all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, this has been going on the whole time. And it just took even a few hours in the morning for me to not eat to realize this. So I think it's really fantastic.
I would like your definition on intermittent fasting. I've done it a few times. My understanding is it's prolonging your fast, because at nighttime when you fall asleep, you technically are fasting. From the time you stop eating to the time you start in the morning, that's why it's called breakfast. You're breaking your fast, and just prolonging that. I have found that I have good success going about 18 hours. And then sometimes I can even go 20 and have like a 4-hour eating window. And I go through ebbs and flows where there's times where I haven't done it now in a few weeks, but if you go back just like 3 weeks, I had 3 or 4 weeks in a row where every Monday through Friday, I wasn't eating until about really dinner time. So I'd wake up, I'd drink water all day long. Yep. And then at like 5 o'clock, I'd have dinner, and maybe I'd have a second snack or something like that at 7 o'clock. And then I'd go to bed and start over again. And it just, for me, I really was able to get into a groove where I could see I could focus more. I didn't have midday crashes. I wasn't digesting things in the middle of the day because digestion takes up a whole lot of energy out of your body all in all, right?
It
So
sure does.
I've said more than I need to. I want you to expand on that if you can.
Love it. I'm like, keep going. So, well, first of all, let's start with the nocturnal fast. The nocturnal fast is very important. And I am a breast cancer survivor as well. So, with that, since having breast cancer and working in oncology for almost 20 years, I really started diving deeper into what are some factors that can really help, because the breast cancer is everywhere, right? And so one of the biggest things that kept coming up in the research was having a minimum of 10-hour fast at night, ultimately reaching for 13 hours. And a 13-hour nocturnal fast is determined to be the most helpful in decreasing risk of breast cancer. And so I think that goes along with the anti-inflammatory approaches or the inflammatory response in our body, and then also supporting the anti-inflammatory response or an approach. So nocturnal fast is very important. So it's very important to stop eating, 2 hours before you go to bed, aiming for that 8 hours of sleep. And then I usually, depending on where people are, if you're generally well, waiting an hour to 3 hours before you eat breakfast, that's up to you and what's going on. If you're actually in like active cancer treatment, what I suggest to people is eating within an hour of waking so that they break off that inflammatory response. Say they're going in for chemotherapy or something. So we really tailor it to each individual because, as you said, you play around with it. Some days you go all day and you have a 4-hour eating window. Some hours are longer feeding window. It depends on you, your body, the response, and then making sure we're not going into panic mode. Okay, so then during that eating window, what are the things that you're eating can make a big difference too. And I just try to keep people from reaching that point of panic where the body panics, and then it's like no holds barred. You eat for 4 hours straight, and then you're like, oh boy. So that's not really beneficial. But so yeah, it varies. Kind of my answers all over the place, kind of like what you're talking about.
Oh, that's good. And then just to make sure everyone understands this, to fast when you wake up for an hour or 2 or 3 hours, whatever you want to do, you can drink water. And I understand you can drink tea as long as it's not sugar added. And similar, you can drink black coffee, correct?
Correct. Yep, correct.
The idea is keep no calories or keep the calories below 5 or something like that. You want to qualify that at all? Is that accurate?
Well, to my knowledge, yes. I literally, it's been mostly liquids, tea, the black coffee. I'm trying to think. I feel like there's something else. Oh, I did isogenics for some time. So they had a drink that you could do.
Okay.
Yeah, but no. So yeah, that sounds about right.
And we're going to cover this more later on, but I'm going to pause real quickly here and let everyone know that if you are interested in talking to Heather more, she is also a consultant, a one-on-one personal health consultant. So you can reach out to her and ask questions about this kind of stuff, and she'd be happy to assist as well. We're going to touch on that, ask questions around that here in a bit. But I wanted to make sure I brought that up since you're talking about cancer and fasting and how it can help people and may perk some interest by individuals.
Thank you.
So this is a big question. There might be many answers, but can you explain how our diet affects mental health?
Oh, wow. Yes, absolutely. It all goes down to our microbiome. Microbiome is our personal jungle. We have 3 feet of personal jungle that God has placed in our intestinal tract as our core. It's our immune function. It's our engine. Yeah, absolutely. It signals to our brain, and our brain, they actually communicate. And that really, if we're not eating live food, if we're not fueling our microbiome with fiber, and which is fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole grains, then you are void. And there is a communication interruption going on. And most likely, we're hearing a lot about, especially since COVID, and I'm very proud of people speaking up and saying, gosh, I'm really low. I'm depressed. I'm anxious. And it all goes back to that self-control, realizing what's going on in our bodies and what we're putting in our bodies, how we're feeding it and fueling our body, and getting to know it. Just like, I equate it to we get in our cars and we drive them every day. But we all don't know how it works in the underworkings, right? Right. And so that's what we are in our bodies. We're all walking around in these bodies and we don't even know, how are we walking? How are we talking? How are we, how are we functioning? And we haven't even really taken a minute to say, how am I digesting what I'm putting in my mouth? How is it fueling my body? Do I care? If I feel good, do I feel good? And it all goes back to mental. Every condition goes back to our mental health. And I had the great benefit of working at a place called Vita, and it's an online platform for nutrition. And they base everything on mental wellness. And it's absolutely true. And if we have that, that awareness, that mental health is at the core of our being, and how can we feed it? How can we nurture it? That's really the most important, right? Yeah.
So you said microbiome. I know what that means, but I'm going to let you expand for anyone who doesn't know what that is, what part of our body that is.
Okay. The microbiome is 3 feet of jungle. And I say that because it's in our intestinal tract. We house it in our intestinal tract, which is, our intestines. And that's where we digest our food and our fluids, and a lot of inner workings go on in there. In our microbiome, there are live cells, there are adaptogens, there's viruses, there's bacteria, good and bad. And really, one thing I'd really like to make sure that people know is that with microbiome, if there is a possibility that if you're not feeding it properly, right, having the color of the rainbow of fruits and vegetables, having the whole grains, having pumpkin seeds, having chia seeds, various nuts and things, if you can, if you're not really focusing on that nutrition and you're just kind of grabbing this like dead food, you're going to fast food and you're just grabbing it. It's quick, it's easy, you're hungry, boom, you get it in, but it's really not nourishing you. Like I mentioned, you have that void. And there it becomes almost like an interruption, because really our microbiome is small, right? It's micro, and it's full of microorganisms and things, but it's trying to communicate. It actually has live cells in it. And so it's trying to talk with our brain. It's trying to talk and signal out to our body. And if it's not properly fed, it won't work. A lot of times I hear people say, they feel anxious, and not realizing that what they could have eaten could have been triggering that. And yeast is I guarantee you, if we could, like almost 9 out of 10 people would have intestinal yeast overgrowth. Intestinal yeast overgrowth is huge for mental health, because when you have it, it can cause anxiety. When you're trying to starve it, because it will tell you to eat sugar, right? It feeds on sugar. And what does sugar helps us makes us feel good for a minute, but then we feel cruddy. But the yeast are having a party. So down in our microbiome, if we starve the yeast of sugars and have the fibers and soluble fibers and prebiotics and insoluble fibers, and push them out and make parking spots for the healthy bacterias and things, the yeast start to die off. And so people get gassy, and they're like, oh no, I'm not eating that good stuff because I got super gassy. And so that's the yeast trick. They're super smart, and They don't want you to keep eating those healthy foods. So they cause this war zone, and you get super gassy and bloated, and you're uncomfortable. And if you can go through it for 3 days and power through it, you're going to find that the anxiety from eating that yeast and the anxiety that the yeast is causing because it's trying to make you eat sugar again will go away. And it's such a powerful thing that you can take care of anxieties and simple anxieties. We're not talking the extreme cases, but simple anxiety, daily anxieties, by what you eat. And empowering through. And if you get that gassiness, the uncomfortable feeling, the best medicine is fennel tea.
I love fennel tea as well.
Yeah. You? Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I'm so excited you even know what fennel tea, like, oh yeah, I love
Oh,
it.
yes. I'm a big fan of tea and I tried many times, but I love the explanation about the yeast in our stomach and how it eats the sugar and it can give anxiety. Because I know in past in times I've experienced that because we all go through ebbs and flows. I try to eat as healthy as I possibly can, but there's definitely ebbs and flows in life where
Yeah.
you go through a little span where you don't eat as healthy, you're eating more sugars. And I can feel
Yeah.
myself having a little bit more anxiety during those times. And I kind of equated your story to making dough, right? Because when you make dough, it's also the yeast eating the sugars, which is creating gas in the yeast and making the bubble in the dough. And actually, matter of fact, quite often when I make like a pizza dough, I will use the instant yeast and throw a little sugar into it to make sure it gets alive and starts eating the sugar. So it's like, it all made sense once you explained it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard too because I can't eat yeast, and if I do, I'm like, as soon as I have that anxious feeling, I'm like, I've had yeast. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love that analogy that, yeah, same as in the dough rising.
The dough. Yeah. So
Yep.
what are some specific foods you think that have a direct influence on our mood and cognitive function?
All right. So to start, the fibers, right?
Right.
So there's a couple of different kinds of fiber, and there's soluble and insoluble. Soluble fibers are more like the foods like avocado, banana. It includes rice, soy, quinoa, corn tortillas, flour tortillas, mango, papaya, and sweet potatoes. So soluble fibers are known for slowing down the gut. They slow down the emptying from the stomach. Okay, so things move more slowly and they're regulatory. Soluble fibers are needed, and most soluble fibers have a prebiotic component to them. So prebiotics are foods that feed the gut. So they feed the probiotics. So you have prebiotics. They get down in the gut. They scoot things out of the way, make the room for the probiotics and the healthy bacteria to get into place. Okay, so we've got soluble fiber, we've got insoluble fiber, and that's going to be things like onions, cruciferous vegetables like your broccoli, cauliflower, cabbages, green leafies, peas, and things like that. No, peas are soluble. So yeah, so it's a lot of like the roughage foods. Okay, so insoluble fibers, they want to get in and out as quickly as possible. Okay, so we call those so insolubles get in and out quickly. So if you have soluble and insoluble fibers, they help to regulate the bowel function, right? And aiming for those fibers, getting 25 to 35 grams a day is going to be very important. Okay, so what was the original question? I forgot already.
Some foods that help
Okay.
your cognitive and mental well-being.
I
Specific
got
foods.
into fiber.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's all right. It's all right.
So yeah, so I got on the fiber track. All
It's
right.
all good. Fiber is
And
important, definitely.
it is the important and all the colors of the rainbow. I can't stress that enough. So here in America, we don't eat enough of the blue and purple color hue. So that's going to be very important because that also supports our microbiome and it supports our brain health. And so we're talking blueberries, blackberries, beets are in that color hue, even though they're reddish purple.
Okay.
And purple carrots, purple potato. And so
Red cabbage, would that fit in that too? Or purple cabbage?
yeah. So red cabbage,
Yep.
same thing. So it can be red and purple.
Yep.
Yep. And those things are fantastic for helping with our brain function. And there's a lot more studies coming out on that color hue. And I base that on the blue zones. And so the blue zones are regions across the world where people are living to be 100 plus years old. And Dan Buettner with National Geographic studied them for, 20 years, I think he said. And I've had their cookbook, the Blue Zones cookbook, now for 5 years. And it's the original one. And it's the cornerstone of how to be healthy, really. And that health includes mental wellness and mental health. And food is one component, right? There's the social aspect, the moving the body aspect, and those all come into play to help with mental health as well. Right. Other foods that, colorful foods are going to be very important. So we've got the fibers, we've got insoluble and soluble, we've got the colorful food. So you want to colorfully construct your meals. I try to colorfully construct my meals all day long, but like you said, even, I sometimes just have this, it's called pacha, Pacha. Have you seen it at Whole Foods? It's in the frozen section, and it's sourdough bread made with just buckwheat and sea salt. It's fantastic because I'm also gluten-free. And so anyway, I'll just have a sourdough bread with some, almond butter on it and call it good. So I'm like, okay, at the end of the day, have I colorfully constructed my day? What colors am I lacking? So at dinner time, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get this color, this color, this color in. Okay. And so I think that's a really good guideline for people to keep that in check, because if you have the colors of the rainbow, you're going to be helping with providing foods that your body needs for body, soul, and spirit, and mind.
Very good.
And then these mushrooms, I have a mushroom blend here. I got this out in Idaho, but it's very important to have these adaptogens. And so that's why this turmeric ashwagandha tea.
Ashwagandha, yep.
Yep, ashwagandha. So adaptogens are going to be important. Okay. And they literally get down and they activate and they talk, they communicate. They communicate with all the things going on in the microbiome. And so they help with our mental health as well, because they adapt. They literally adapt to what is needed in our body. And if we can have those, an infusion of those each day, that's going to be very important for our cognitive health.
Very good. And I'm making a list of questions because my question list is growing. So I don't want to miss some of these things. I think they're all terribly important. One thing, since you held up the mushroom bag, it seems like, and first off, I love mushrooms and in many different formats. I put mushrooms in as many dishes I cook as I can. And I found if I chop them up finely enough, my family doesn't even know they're in there quite often because they'll just absorb the flavor of whatever you're making. And so I'll try to find as many mushrooms as I can. But also, in addition to that, I try to take some kind of mushroom powder in the morning. So it seems like what I'm getting at is the recognition of mushrooms has kind of exploded in the last 3 years. Any thought as to why that's become so popular in recent times?
I think it seriously was from COVID. We saw so much mental challenges through that, the isolation and things. And so how can we connect, right? And mushrooms came up not only because we need them in our body for our mental health and wellness, but also because they're connected across the world. There's a network underneath across the world. We're completely connected. So I think that's really symbolic of a lot of things. And I think that's why things are finally exploding. And people are like, a lot. I mean, I don't even know the number right now. It's billions are seeking self-education. And so there's all these courses now. There's all kinds of things online that we didn't have before COVID. And that the resources are there, and people are really talk about starting to communicate. Content creators, providers, doctors are getting on social media and saying, this is what you need. And I'm blanking on the doctor, the gut health doctor, but he has a fiber fueled book that's amazing. And then there's Darren O'Lean and the 121 Tribe. And there's just so many people who are, what are they called? Influencers.
Yep.
And I think that's been huge, especially since COVID, that the influencers have really come out of the woodwork and they're everywhere. And it's really been, there's a positive to it, there's not such bad stuff. I mean, there's pros and cons of the social media aspect, but there's a lot of good things coming out. And one of them is the information on mushrooms. And it's worldwide. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And to restate my initial question, I was not at all implying mushrooms was a fad. Back in like 2015, I remember going somewhere and being introduced to a mushroom tincture, and I bought 3 or 4 bottles of it. It wasn't in my local area here. I was traveling someplace else, and I've loved it ever since then. So it isn't a fad because of COVID. It's been around. It's just becoming more prevalent now because people are becoming more aware of health.
Oh, no, I took that. You're absolutely spot on. There's just more coverage on it in the last few years, maybe 3 or 4 years now. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So talking about sugar earlier and fiber, you've covered fiber a lot. A little tip that I want to share with people that I have found. So I've really gotten on a kick about fiber, and my fiber kick has been the past, I don't know, probably 2 years. And it came down to, I had some cholesterol. I just had some elevated cholesterol. It was one of those things where I never found it to be a concern, but my doctor, of course, wanted to put me on a statin. I didn't want to be on a statin. And so I started doing research, and I found that fiber is a good, combatant for cholesterol. And so I started finding every way I could to get fiber in my body, and also at the same time trying to reduce sugar intake, which is something you and I've already talked about. And I found something great that works for me for a dessert, like after dinner, because sometimes after dinner you want a dessert. And I'm no way sponsoring this brand. I'm sure there's other brands. I'm positive there are. But I found this brand called Aloha, I think, and they have bars that are. I don't want to misquote, but it's a really good amount of fiber and a low amount of sugar. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, most of their bars have somewhere around 9 grams of fiber and like 4 grams of sugar in them. And so for me, and they're still sweet. They have like mint chocolate chip, and they have peanut butter cup, and they have these different flavors. For me, I'll eat one of those after dinner sometimes, and I know I'm getting good fiber. I'm not getting a lot of sugar, and I still kind of quench that thirst for a little bit of dessert.
Oh, that's amazing. And you know what? I bet they do. And I don't know this because I'm not all the way familiar with Aloha Bar, but a lot of these bars in the up level, like the healthier, like thoughtfully crafted ones, they add chicory root, and chicory root is right. It's a prebiotic. So there we go. Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I love those bars.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, I'm gonna have to check them out. I do. So I had my event, the 618 Wellness event. And for dessert, I offered its dates, walnuts, dark chocolate chips, and apples.
Oh,
and
very
it's
good.
Like a vegan, kind of like a Snickers-like bar, caramel apple. And
that's delicious.
Yeah. So that Aloha bar sounds very familiar, like very similar to that, like a little nutty and sweet.
I'm looking at your site while we talk and see if is that the vegan caramel apple? Is that a vegan Snickers, or is something?
Well, I combined them for the event.
Okay, very good.
It's a little like a dessert cup.
Yeah. If anyone who wants to follow along, it's Heather Gabbert rdn.com. Heather Gabbert rdn.com. You can go there to find Heather as well. Going on to questions, another topic that I like talking about with regards to healthy eating is fats. We went through a time in the, maybe 80s where it was marketed fats bad for us. That's not really the case at all. We need fats. And I've read more and more, though, about obviously good fats and bad fats. And it seems like there's I don't know, again, I hate to use the word trend, but I'm hearing a lot about seed fats are bad. You want to really stick to avocado, or as another influencer calls it, avocado, which I always find that funny. He calls it avocado. Avocado oil and olive oil are the two you want to stick with. What are your thoughts on that topic?
Okay, so as far as fats, yes. So there's different levels of fats, right? And so we've got the fats from our nuts and seeds. I don't necessarily think we need to stay away from them. I just think it's a matter of how much we have of them. And because pumpkin seeds, for example, are so fantastic for us, right? They've got protein and potassium, right? Yes. And so the plant fats, I think we can be a little more generous with exception of coconut. Like coconut oil, it's really a saturated fat. And so while it's good in small amounts, I wouldn't have more than a tablespoon a day of coconut oil. The other thing is with other oils. So I am vegan, mostly about 90% vegan, but with fish oil, for example, omega-3 fish oil from salmon, halibut, cod. And when I lived up in Washington State, I mean, people would go on expeditions up in Alaska and come back with a ton of fish. And I'd be like, oh, yes, please. So we had wild Alaskan caught salmon at our fingertips, which is amazing. And so if you have that, great. But as far as having fish, brought over from China and other countries, it has to travel a very long way. You hope it stays frozen, but who knows? You know what I mean? There's just a lot of factors that fall into play. So with fats, omega-3s are fantastic. We can get omega-3s from the food sources from fish, but it can also be from our plant foods, avocado, right? And our walnuts, and they are high in omega-3s. The body has to do a little bit more work to get them, but they're still good to incorporate. Olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, and avocado oil. 2 great oils to use, depending on who you talk to. There are some, like Mastering Diabetes guys. I love them, by the way. They're amazing. Cyrus and Robbie, they have PhDs, and they are fantastic. And they have managed their type 1 diabetes with their Mastering Diabetes nutrition approach. They don't use oils, but they use whole foods. Okay. So, but extra virgin olive oil is fantastic for low or no heat. And so I put that in the salad dressing that we make at Halo. I actually ask people, please wait till you're done preparing your food to drizzle on the olive oil. Try not to use it in the oven. It's really not meant for those high temperatures. Avocado oil, then, on the other hand, has a higher smoke point, right? So you can use that at high heat, and it's fantastic because it comes from avocado, which has the omega-3 fatty acids. So, yeah. And a really nice fat profile. The lipid profile is monounsaturated fats.
Yes. I found we try to eat as healthy as we can in our house, and I have found a go-to for me is tacos, because you can do so much with tacos to keep it healthy. Like you can do, sweet potatoes and black beans with I call them papitas, the pumpkin seeds, roasted pumpkin seeds, and avocado on top, and even like a cabbage slaw, and you have a delicious taco at that point in time that's all vegan and very, very healthy for you. I think there's so many ways. I often tell my wife, I'm pretty certain I could cook tacos for 2 weeks straight, and every day you have a different type of taco. Mushroom tacos. Oh, I love mushroom tacos. Put some garlic, onion, mushrooms all sauteed in there. Oh, it's delicious. So many things.
Oh, I am getting hungry.
Right? That's probably why I'm talking about it, because I'm actually hungry right now. So we talked about foods that help with your mental health. What are foods we should avoid for mental well-being? And we touched on sugar, but let's just expand into more.
Okay. Things to avoid. So this hits on something for me, because as registered dietitians, I did my own poll years ago. And I asked people, when you hear registered dietitian, what do you think of? And they think of someone who says what you can't do. And then when you hear nutritionist, what do you think of? And they said, oh, that's someone who's going to coach me and tell me what I can do. So I really switched gears on, hey, let's tell people what we can do. But I love this question. Okay.
That's good.
Because to avoid some things is not saying, hey, you can't have this. It's just having that knowledge, right? And knowledge is power. So, of course, avoiding more than 28 grams of sugar a day. And believe me, I was a Skittles kid. I used to eat those Sugar Babies candies. I mean, I was a latchkey kid. So I'd come home and I'm like, And so I totally get it. And even in my adult life, I still tend to like, I'll have some little, and enjoy that. So trying to not have more than 28 grams of sugar in a day. So being conscious. Having too much caffeine, okay, that can make us jittery, anxious, almost even sometimes in extreme cases, it can make us paranoid and irritable. And so staying away from extremes is what I'm trying to say. So really anything in extreme. I've never really had anyone come to me and say, I had too much vegetables today, Right. So I think if we try to strike a balance, avoid extremes where you're only, I'm supposed to I saw this on TikTok and, this challenge or that challenge. It's like, trying to stick with whole foods, not as much convenience foods. And so with the grocery prices going higher and even fast foods, even coffee places now have signs, price increase due to our prices, our costs increase. So we're seeing it everywhere. And try to avoid getting into that, I can't afford to eat healthy, so I might as well just eat that or this. So avoid self-sabotage, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes the eating healthy, I've found is people think it's a costly thing, but it's really not if you're buying the raw ingredients. And depending where you buy them at, I don't mean everyone has different grocery stores in different areas, but around here we have Aldi, and Aldi has, in my mind, a great produce area, and you can get it really inexpensive. And so if you're comparing me to, we're going back to tacos, cooking some type of vegetarian tacos compared to going to a fast food place, I would actually say I spend less cooking vegetarian tacos for a family of 4 than I would spending money at McDonald's for a family of 4. I would argue that.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that's actually for the event on Tuesday, I had Taco Tuesday, and it was the triple beans, and you could get a can of beans. One thing I do want you to avoid are the chemicals. So if it has EDTA in there, I would suggest try not to get that. If you can't find a can of beans without EDTA, then buy it and rinse them off really well.
Correct.
Yeah. So that would be one thing I want you to avoid for sure. And then, but yeah, so having the beans is a great protein. It's full of fiber. It's full of nutrients. And then what I've started doing is adding fennel seeds to my beans so that it helps break down the gassiness and things that people experience.
I'm glad you touched on beans. That was one topic I was going to bring up next, because I think beans are somewhat magical in the fact that you get the protein, you get a bunch of fiber. Do you think there's certain beans that are better for us than others, legumes?
Yeah. So, in the blue zones again, they eat beans every day. So Dan Buettner would say, you don't need supplements. You need this as a supplement. And he'd hold up a bean and say, you need 120 of these little guys. I think that's what the number, but anyway, it's basically a half a cup of beans a day. Okay. And he held up a black bean, but black bean, cannellini beans, Great Northern, pinto, really go the variety. Yeah. And they do that in Costa Rica too. So, and having those different varieties again is fantastic. I talked to a gentleman this morning who he's not from this country, and he had a nutrition consult with him, and he's like, "Gosh, I still like." He even has bagged chickpeas, the garbanzo beans, and so I've never prepared the garbanzo beans from a bag before. I'm a can girl on those, So I thought that was interesting. What about you? Have you used a bag?
I've never seen garbanzo beans in a bag. We had a conversation about that just like 2 weeks ago. As you know, my wife's starting a dog food company, and we're looking for garbanzo beans. And she goes, we get a bag. I've never seen a bag of garbanzo beans. So I've never seen that. I
know. I hadn't either. So yeah. So that was new to me too. And here, so we're still learning,
Yeah.
Being a dietitian, everyone's like, well, you know everything about all the food. I'm like, well, there's 87 different kinds of rice. So just think about all the different kinds of food. But yeah. So yeah, beans are fantastic. And if you can have beans every day or aim for 2 cups of beans a week, that's actually, it was part of a continuing education unit that I did for my continuing education piece for registered dietitian, certification. And they have the blue zones, and it's in medical offices now. And it's awesome because they have a whole curriculum that they're using for the outpatient dietitians and things to give to the patients, and beans is on there.
Nice. A bean I don't get nearly enough of that I really enjoy is fava beans. They're kind of hard to find fresh, it seems like.
Yeah. Yep. I'm trying to think, where did I see? I just saw fava. Oh, it was in Seattle.
Okay. Yeah. And they take a little work to cook. So you gotta, if you want to double shell them, you can. It's kind of they have a skin inside the shell. You can also blanch and take off. They're a little more work, but makes a great succotash with fava beans, I think.
Tell me about that. I've never had a fava bean, to be honest.
So it comes in a long pod, and there's, I
Yeah.
don't know, 5, 6, 7 beans in the pod. So you got to first take the beans out of the pod. Some people, cook them that way and eat them. I then took an extra step where I blanched all the beans. When you blanch them all, the outer skin kind of comes right off, and so then you just have
Oh,
the inner bean part. And
okay.
I then saute those in some avocado oil with corn and tomatoes and garlic and onion, and make kind of a succotash with it. I think it's just wonderful.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I love succotash. So, okay, awesome. And I didn't mention black-eyed peas.
Oh,
Those
yes.
are good too. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So with all your knowledge, you obviously, we touched on this earlier, offer a consultation service. Let's talk about what you offer and who you offer it to and who may be a good client for you who might be listening to this.
All right. Absolutely. So honestly, it's a virtual platform, heathergabbertrdn.com. I started back in 2019, actually before COVID. And it was with my company called Street Cred Nutrition out in Washington. And what you can expect is to have, just like we're doing now, we have a conversation. And literally, what I've been finding though, within 15 minutes of talking to you, within 15 minutes, there's a framework already built. And in order to reframe your nutrition and to reframe your food choices, and really the mindset as to what is going on with food and nutrition in your world. And anywhere it can be for wellness, it could be for weight wellness. Say someone wants to lose weight. Typically, I haven't talked with anyone who wants to lose weight that doesn't also have another chronic condition or a new condition diagnosed. Generally, high blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, heart health. Those tend to be the biggies. So if you need help with that, I am here to help. I am here to guide and educate. So it's like, kind of that teach a man to fish. I don't want to just spew all that I know. I want you to know it. I want you to be able to see me in my kitchen or see me here, and I can show you things in your kitchen or your space so that it's really bringing it home to you. And there's the chronic conditions, there's acute conditions or new conditions that you might be dealing with, weight wellness, and cancer is one of the big ones. I talk a lot with, like I said, I've been in oncology world for almost 20 years of my 30-year career. And that's really trickled over into wellness and their aftercare, when they want to thrive. Going through cancer treatment is a journey. And so nutrition looks very different during an active cancer treatment than it does in your aftercare. And that it's kind of a hybrid then of a wellness approach for lifelong wellness. Okay, so longevity, that's why I keep talking about the blue zones, because that's another component or another area of nutrition I love to cover. I'm 53. I'm looking forward to my next chapter. So my biggest, my hashtag when I turned 50 was 50 not frumpy. So I'm like, I do not want to be frumpy. And really just, and that goes deeper than that, but that was just a kind of a fun tagline. So we've got wellness, chronic conditions, acute conditions, especially cancer specialty, and gut health. Okay, so gut health falls in line with the mental well-being and food allergies, food sensitivities, celiac. My son has celiac. My daughter and I combined have about 25 food allergies. So really, in my home, nutrition, our meals could have been 3 different meals because we all don't have the same issues. My son, before we found out he had celiac, he also had food allergies, which dissipated once we figured out he had celiac. Okay. So really, I think what I'm trying to say is my specialty is I modify, and I have that. I've had to make custom creations at home, my whole adult life and for the kids and myself. So it really, I love how I've had that experience, and I happen to be a registered dietitian professionally. So professionally and personally, I've been affected, and I love that I'm able to relate and to anyone really coming to me for nutrition help. And it really ends up helping them, their families, and in other areas that seem to fall in line too. Yeah.
That's great. So to recap a couple things, if you have an ailment, a nutrition need, a health need, and you want assistance with how food can assist that, it sounds like you can help with that. I also want to add, I don't think you focus on this, that you do virtual consultations. So anyone in the country can actually reach out to you and have a call just like this to get assistance from you. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So it's not just local. But I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what's so awesome because I can see you at your home, and that way it feels like when we're talking, you're like you're right at home, so you can get to work and incorporating that instead of meeting someone at an office, and then you get home and you're like, oh, I forgot what she said, or I'm not, that. Yeah.
And then we're going to touch on Halo, but I would assume because of Halo, you can probably even offer recipes for people to try to help them with their food journey. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So I have at Halo Earth Angel Specialty Kitchen. I do thrive on making custom creations, and so I have a menu. I have vegan fare, and I have some fish and chicken as well. And it really comes from I'm really trying to get you to eat the rainbow of color every day. Okay, so I'm trying to really incorporate more plant-based and plant-forward nutrition for you. And that really started as an extension of my virtual consultations. And so, it's like, we're talking about this. Say you need to have, like starting tomorrow or starting Monday, I suggested to you to try to eat the color of the rainbow every day. And so I have rainbow smoothie recipes. I've got rainbow soup. I call it the sunburst soup. It's a sweet potato and turmeric pumpkin soup that I love. And it really is good for any time of the year. I know it's hot in summer right now, but it's still quite good, especially if you have the rainbow salad with it. And the rainbow salad literally has like blueberries or blackberries. It's got the greens, of course, yellow squash, yellow pepper, if you can have peppers. Some people stay away from the peppers and the tomatoes, so I'm very mindful of that as well. Again, it can be custom created for you and your condition. If you have rheumatoid arthritis, a lot of people don't want to have peppers and tomatoes. So we can find the colors that work for you. And I do have recipes. It's called the Rainbow Reset. It's about a 30-page booklet of a menu, of a 4-day menu. It's meant to be followed 4 days a week for 4 weeks. So it's a 4x4. And
nice.
It's that whole reframing. So we're reframing your nutrition to be a picture of health. And so that's why I had people hold up the empty frame and put their face in it like, hey, we're reframing our nutrition. And so it can be fun too, but really starting with that, with a core foundation of reframing that 4x4, because think of a structure, right? Without the proper framing, the building won't stand, right? Especially your foundation, right? So for me, it's God. I have a faith foundation, and I really build on that. And so I help people building their framework that works for them and their families, and it includes a menu, recipes, mindset help. It's got some routines for morning, routines in the evening, and it all comes together that 4th week. And exercise. We haven't mentioned exercise. Oh my gosh, that's huge for mental wellness, and it goes hand in hand with nutrition.
And in addition, so you have the one-on-one consultation where you assist people with how to eat better. You have Halo Earth Angel with recipes and foods, and I think you also do some catering. Is that correct also?
I do, yes.
And real quickly, before you talk about catering, I want to specify, I think your phone number is behind you on that banner. And it's not her. She doesn't cater the 509 area code. Why don't you talk about where you do catering?
So this is my virtual consultation because I still work with an oncology group out in Idaho. So yes, I just switched my Illinois number. My 618 number is 618-818-3343. And that is on my new menu, and on the it should be on the printable menu there on the drop down under Halo to Go. And I thought we put it somewhere else, but so Nikki, my IT.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, good. So that'll be on there. And I'm trying to really, so locally I can cater, and I do meal prep and delivery as well. So we can base it on the menu we have, but again, I can make modifications. So if that food isn't appealing to you, I tried my taco out on the event night and it went really well. So I'm going to add that to the menu. And like you said, you can make different tacos, and that could be, kind of something fun that you do, but you can really change up the recipe so it helps people on a day-to-day. So meal prep and delivery, you can text me at the 618 number, or this number even, but the 618-818-3343, and we can just have a customization call and figure out what you're wanting, and then I can direct you to ordering it, and we can just, I'm a startup, so it's really fun. Like, hey, whatever you want to do, let's try it, and we'll see how it goes.
Very good. Very good. So to contact you, we've already covered the Heather Gabbert, rdn.com. Is there social media people should look for you?
Yes. So I'm on Instagram. It's Earth Angel Food and Co. on there. It's Heather Gabbert, my name,
Okay.
and you'll see that and the Gab Live to Be Well.
Okay.
On Facebook, it's Heather Gabbert, Earth Angel Food and Company, and there's Halo Specialty Kitchen. It's actually on there. It won't let me change the name, but it's Halo Specialty Kitch.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I went back to change it, and it won't let me for like 90 days or something. But I finally have a Facebook page.
Topics or things you do we didn't cover that you want to talk about?
I think it's just relating. I just want everyone, I'm like you, and my company's not about me, it's about you. And I just really want to encourage people to be encouraged. There's help out there. I am here to help. And affordability and practicality are in mind always. They're on the forefront of my mind for you. I am not expensive on my consultations. It's not about the money. They were $100 for 40 minutes. I've dropped them down to $50. Made it as an introductory offer. And then even I have, if you know someone who, maybe can't afford it, maybe you want to gift them a consult, or maybe you yourself want one, and you just, let's talk, because I have different discount codes that I can take off even from that. Because like I said, it's not about the money, it's about you having that knowledge. And that's one good thing, about some of the social media aspects, is that people are learning, okay? And it's not costing a lot for them. But if you want to go further and have me make meals for you, let's talk. I mean, that's what Gab Lived to Be Well, was my original, it was like, let's talk, or NutriGab, let's talk nutrition. So that's really what it's, even though I have another name that I'm going under now, it's really about let's talk. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you being on today and talking about all this. These are conversations that I could probably keep talking about for more time, because I really enjoy health. I really enjoy eating healthy. I really enjoy food. And I think it's all very important for people to have knowledge on how food can help their mental well-being and even their physical well-being, and what food can do to make people healthier and better. And
yeah, absolutely. And thanks for being a good steward of mental wellness and helping people to get to resources.
thank you. I appreciate having you on the show again. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. It was awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for listening. I hope you found that discussion helpful and interesting. If there are any topics you would like to hear discussed, head over to take2minutes.org and use the contact us form to submit your suggestions. Also, if you appreciate our content, sign up for an account at take2minutes.org. Subscriptions help us to continue generating new content. Thanks again.